All right, everybody, welcome back to Wizards of Gore. My name is Gordon Ramsay.
And I am Mia Goth.
Ah, topical.
Yeah.
And today we're going to give you our concise review of Pearl, the new Ty West film. We just came from seeing it this weekend, opening weekend. And we both saw X. I actually saw X in the theaters when it was out. I believe you saw
Big
it.
Man. Okay.
At home. Well, that's right.
I had to stream it, I was so busy.
Well, I have to establish some dominance somehow.
Fuck you.
So, yeah. So, James, what's your? Let's just dispense with any suspense. What would be your rating for Pearl?
A solid 9 out of 10.
Okay. So why 9 out of 10 for you?
The only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because I haven't watched it a second time, so I'm being a little reserved in my score ranking. But there was really no issues I could find with the film. I thought the performances were terrific, especially Mia Goth's. And I loved the direction, the music, the cinematography. 9 out of 10, take it or leave it.
Said with authority. I agree. I concur. I would give it a 9 out of 10, and actually for the same reasons. I think for something to get a perfect score, you got to have some replay value, and sometimes there's something you miss or whatever. But that would be my initial reaction. A gorgeous film. I would say the standout part of it is the acting. It is. I can see some horror fans perhaps thinking we're being a little generous because they may say it's light on some horrific elements. So you have to be a fan of slow burn stuff. You have to be okay with maybe a lighter body count, but still a brutal body count, as it were.
Oh, for sure.
But it's very much a psychological dive, and so. But let's talk about some specifics here. So the star, full name, Mia Gypsy Mello da Silva Goth.
My God.
So that multisyllabic, that is probably why she goes by Mia Goth. Fair enough. Yeah. Although I kind of really wish she went by all 6 of her names, because that's fabulous. And it's quite interesting. So she absolutely steals the show, understandably, because there's not a scene where she's not really involved for the I would say vast majority. But the film, even though it's a prequel to X, it really does stand on its own.
Yeah.
And it's very, very much a period piece. That's something that Ty West, I think, is really, really good at. He's very skilled with that kind of thing. Captured that 70s grit and Texas Chainsaw Massacre flair in X. I think he had a lot of the, and I need to show it to you. I know you haven't seen it, but he captured a lot of the Rosemary's Baby, Babysitter Killer kind of feel of, of antiquity in horror icon land, right? With House of the Devil. He's really good at that kind of thing. He really does, I think, throw himself completely into all the conventions, color schemes, fonts in the credits, everything of a certain period. I think Ty West really does feel kind of like a student of horror, similar to me, like in a way like Adam Green or any of those guys that really started to make some waves in the early 2000s. I think he's right in that same camp. Just a really creative director. And what's interesting about him in the last couple films he's done, he directed, he wrote, he produced, and he edited. And that kind of complete control, I think, really reflects in this specific vision he has. And I think that's why we can forgive him for making Cabin Fever 2. Yeah,
herpes-infested wieners is a little too far for me, Chris.
Well,
sorry, spoilers for Cabin Fever 2, if you've been wanting to watch that.
Well, so it, Cabin Fever 2 notwithstanding. I think he's had a really pretty good track record with things like Innkeepers, Sacrament, all that kind of stuff. So this is keeping right in line with that. And there's not much to say about the plot. I don't think you need to summarize the plot in this thing. It's exploring Pearl, the antagonist of X, in her youth, 1918. A lot of topical stuff. And he deliberately chose to set it in 1918 with the Spanish flu happening. People are wearing masks. People are quarantining or worried about germs to some degree. And I think that was a really interesting corollary for us to be able to see, a perspective on a historical event that we now have a perspective on that we are probably the first in decades to be able to kind of think about that sort of thing. Yeah. And so it's interesting. It's interesting to kind of look back and say, man, almost like we just went through this kind of thing. Not a ton of characters, not a lot to keep up with there, but just extravagant scenes of emotional output in terms of what they're doing. And Mia Goth does a wonderful job. My favorite scene is where she has this soliloquy. I think there's no other way to put it. I mean, it's practically, like a Shakespearean thing where she's talking to her husband, but it's not her husband. Her sister-in-law is saying, "Well, just talk." And so she's speaking, looking right in her eyes and saying all these things. And she's like confessing to horrible shit she's done. And I mean, it's just shocking. And it's one shot, one continuous. She has just blocked it. It's very reminiscent of like Inglourious Bastards. And those, when you had Christoph Waltz just kind of in frame and he's just sitting there. And he could go from one emotion to the next, and the camera never blinked. And so it was really, really arresting. And I think she did a great job of that kind of thing. And whereas Christoph Waltz could go from being almost congenial and friendly and charming to utterly threatening, she, on the other hand, goes from being very childlike and innocent, and you want to hug her and tell her everything's going to be okay and you're going to make it, to being completely unhinged. Yeah. So it is not exactly the same as, that it's not a corollary per se of Christoph Waltz, but it's that same kind of this spectrum of emotions that can be seen in a single shot, in a single scene, and you see it in their eyes, body language, the voice, everything changes. Really, really impressive. And who else here? Tandy Wright did a great job as the mother. So very domineering, but also had like a lot of pain, like holding in all sorts of anguish and despair and all this kind of stuff. And it's really palpable, and there's this collision of Pearl's seemingly ignorant hope or sure-footedness. I'm going to be a star. This is going to happen. And the mother's just, God, I don't know, like hyper reality. She is so pessimistic and refuses on but it's very clear that she has had this horribly difficult life, and she's kind of she resents this hope that she has. But I think in a weird way, her brutality, and now that's probably the wrong word in this context, but her sternness is actually to protect Pearl. She actually does care about Pearl. She doesn't want Pearl to be hurt, because perhaps, some subtext here is that she's seeing in Pearl maybe some of the hopes she had, as is revealed during a just monumental dinner scene where all the truth comes flying out, and it's very emotional and all that kind of stuff. Some interesting twists and turns, a lot of parallels with Wizard of Oz in terms of the opening credits, closing credits, the fonts chosen, the color scheming, some of the framing, even the dress that is chosen for Pearl, and as she rides a bike, reminiscent of the Wicked Witch. And so it, it certainly has like a 30s kind of film flair to it, vibrant Technicolor notwithstanding.
Especially in the music.
Yeah, and Tyler Bates and who else? Okay, wait. I want to make sure I say this correctly. Tim Williams. So I don't know how duties were divided, but the music is fabulous. And as a music fan, I'm really, really impressed with how they were able to capture the feel of like a 30s, melodrama kind of thing. Like the music would have chord progressions and melodies and things that you just don't hear anymore. Like you hear it and instantly makes you feel like, oh man, that's very antiquated. And then without any, it's just magical sleight of hand. Just they would be able to kind of easily slip us into the horror and the realism with the score without betraying anything. Like it was just really, really spot on composition. And so I don't know if both of them shared duties, if one of them was a consultant. Either way, hats off to both of them.
Yeah, we applaud you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, really, really fantastic job. And Ty West wrote this as well, and wrote it with Mia Goth. So he wrote X, and then he wrote this with Mia Goth. I think that a lot of her writing credit has to come from the dialogue, particularly many of her just, again, like soliloquy, like monologues where she's just going off about her hopes or her dreams or how upset she is. And I feel like Mia has such a, and I hope it's Mia. I never even looked up how to pronounce it, but if it isn't, I'm sorry, I'm a terrible person. But she's going so all in, and I bet much like even Doug Bradley would say things, and Robert Englund would say things like, Freddie wouldn't say it this way, or Pinhead wouldn't say it this way, at least back in the day, and they would tweak some lines or something like that to make sure it fit the character. And I know there's plenty of horror icons who have sort of stepped in and said, no, they wouldn't say it this way. And the same has probably been true for comedies like The Office.
Yeah,
Dwight's not going to say it this way, or Michael Scott wouldn't say it this way, or or Breaking Bad, like Walter White wouldn't phrase it this way or whatever. So I feel like she did enough to where she would have had a writing credit, because she may have just gotten it up with Ty, and because it's so dialogue heavy. I think the smart thing was to include her into like how would it feel? And
it feels really personal too.
Yeah,
like the dialogue and how she expresses it.
It's a lot of authenticity that comes through.
Like she was working through some shit during those scenes.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who makes like super emotional, heartbreaking kind of music, where I'm trying to purge emotions, and when I perform, I go to these dark places and stuff like that. So you see her in her face, like maybe she's acting, and she's not touching something, but I don't know, man. Like I look in her eyes, like as the tears are coming out, there's some trigger she's able to go and hit
Absolutely.
Deep inside that is causing that. It's she may not be reacting to this text right here, but there's some place of hurt or longing or loneliness that she's able to connect with, and that's something that I identified with. Like I felt bad for her. I identified with her as she talked about her loneliness and all this stuff, and her alienation, and
hit close to home.
Yeah, I'm supposed to do this, and it's not like I've never thought, oh, I'm going to be a star. I was never like that, but just this. Wow, this is my life. Is this all it's going to be? And it's, I don't know, it's powerful.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, it's really quite something to see. Some wonderful cinematography, some fabulous acting, and I'm really, really curious to see where it goes with Maxine, the third in this trilogy.
And hopefully we won't have to wait too long. I mean, impressively, like I think X came out March of this year, and this film just came out. I mean, God damn.
Yeah, and in research, they were shot back to back, so there was either a lot of faith or maybe I don't know, because of the fact that it was all on that same farm.
Yeah.
Now that is economic, because if they knew, well, I'm going to use some of the same actors and we're going to use this same set, let's just go ahead and shoot this other thing. That could be very economical, like I said.
And what's impressive is I was looking it up. I believe X and Pearl both had a budget of $1 million. And yet here, like, that budget was, I think, used much better in the sets and the costumes and stuff. I find that to be really impressive.
And I think part of that is X has a larger body count.
Yeah.
X has a lot of dark, slasher-like shots. Though it pays, it tips the hat to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It is very reminiscent of a lot of the 70s slashers.
For sure.
I even felt like there's some Italian influence in there, to be honest with you. But it's certainly... So some of those set pieces, maybe some of the prosthetics, obviously all the makeup for the Mia Goth playing Pearl as well.
Yeah.
So just effects probably took up a large portion of that budget. And so with this new one, if they weren't going to have that, she was able to just be herself. Not that there weren't effects, not that there weren't prosthetics. There are, there's still some great stuff like that. The vast majority of screen time is not going to be taken up by that kind of stuff because there's so much that seems to be happening in her head.
Yeah.
And the music kind of cues that. Some of the visuals you'll see, especially the dance scene, you're left questioning, are we seeing the world through Pearl's eyes or not? It helps kind of blur reality a little bit as Pearl is very, very unhinged. That really does help that out. And so this one, they focus a lot more on character, but by not having as many prosthetics, they could afford some of these extra sets or some of these Model T cars or some of these other, props they might need. And, I think that was really effective. It certainly built out the world and really, really did make it unique. I would be, once Maxine is done, I'm going to be really curious to watch all three of these. Because I know Ty West even talked about making them part of like a universe, but not making it necessarily like Halloween kills, Halloween
right.
It's like a sequential, this happens today, this will happen tomorrow, and this will happen the next day. This is, my goodness, you're talking about
decades,
60 years between, and then 10 years between these two. So it's an interesting approach to that universe thing. And one that I think I could get a little bit more behind than the exhaustiveness of like MCU, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff. That's not a horror thing, I know, but like that made so much money and everybody was talking about it. So many people started to, oh man, we should do that. And it's just, I think you should only do that if it works. And in this case, what's cool about this is we're exploring characters from a story in disparate places.
Yeah.
And that will work. And I'd be interested to see after Maxine killed, turned so desperate at the end of X, where is she going to go? And how is Pearl, this film we just saw, how will that influence? Will that tie in? Because he said they're going to be a part of a universe, but they're going to all be independent.
Yeah, their own thing.
And right now, I think these can all stand on their own.
Absolutely. So, well, when Maxine comes out, get all three of those on Blu-ray, you call your friend. We're going to have a nice date night. Let me tell you what.
Excellent. Boy. That's definitely happening. That'll be a good retrospective thing. We just, sort of look at the whole trilogy, how they fit together. But so yeah, I definitely recommend Pearl. Very, very enjoyable. With the understanding that this is made for people that are into perhaps the more artistic, more slow burn horror. It will not be as like esoteric and confusing with all the, you would get it, man, it's a metaphor thing that some A24 films can do.
It's not like that for sure.
But so it's very clear like that. But it's just a beautiful character study. It's heartbreaking. It's got some wonderful moments of tension. It really masterfully has some moments of just, ooh, what's going to happen? You kind of sit still, like, what's gonna, So it's I think exquisitely made. So with horror like this coming out and getting some quality films, I've felt it imperative that we put the recommendation out there. Tell me, hey, go see it in the theaters and stuff.
Please
like that.
Go see it
and support films like this, so we can keep getting that kind of thing, and we never have to return to the god-awful teen slasher craze of the 90s.
Oh,
so
God.
I don't have to live through
He's
it.
having a Vietnam flashback. Come back, Chris.
I know what you did last summer at H2O. So I don't want to ever have to live through it. You can't make me go back. So yeah, this is this potentially the fact that they're pumping these two films out like that, man. This I hope they'll keep going. I know Mia Goth has just had a child, so probably not going to get Maxine in the next 3 months. But so it's in pre-production, so we're gonna have to wait. That's the only bad thing about this. This spoiled us because it was like, oh well, shit, let's keep it going. But that's okay. But cool. So yeah, 9 out of 10 for me.
9 out of 10 for me.
And there that is. So Pearl recommended. And I guess with that, we're going to end it here under the 25-minute mark. That's got to be some sort of record for me. I talk way too much.
Nice.
So, all right. Well, until next time. My name is Mrs. Mia Wallace.
And I am Hugh Hefner.
And this is Wizards of Gore. We'll see you next time.